there is a boiling moment nationally now. And Ben Verlander tweeted out, and if we could pull that tweet up, Zach, do you mind?
Yep.
So Ben Verlander tweeted this out. This is the original tweet from Ben. The Baltimore Orioles front office has ruined this window that should have been open for a decade. The writing was all on the wall. They were the cream of the crop in the AL East. They let it all go because they didn't want to spend any money. Now, that's a very aggressive to say windows closed. And he also said, I also want to add the window doesn't have to be closed. Obviously, the young guys are still there, but not extending guys and not signing anyone is not the answer and has caused the window to begin to close instead of burst wide open. So to clarify all of that. So to wrap up the game yesterday, the Orioles lose a game where Trevor Williams is throwing 87-mile-an-hour cutters, and it said a four-seam fastball. The thing was not a four-seam fastball. The Orioles had chances, and to their credit, they manufactured 3 runs with 2 sac flies and a 2-out RBI. But the glaring thing was they had 12 opportunities with runners in scoring position, and Adley's one hit is the only hit that they had of those opportunities. And you drop a game 4-3 where you get to the bullpen, and Tomoyuki Sagano, Zach, battled after the first inning, and the birds still fall. I don't know if we have that necessary comment if the Baltimore wins last night, but it's definitely starting to blow up now that the Orioles are losers of 3 straight. Yeah. They face Mackenzie Gore, and then they got to go play the Detroit Tigers, who have been playing some of the best ball in baseball at this current moment in time.
I agree. It is one of those things where their play is the reason that all these comments are becoming more relevant. I think, even with this same squad, if the Orioles were even sitting hell at like 12-12 right now, or I guess 12-11, we wouldn't be seeing these comments about how the window is closing, all of that. I think people would be more concerned about, they need to add to this team. They're, hovering at 500, stuff like that. But because of the lack of big time moves in the offseason, paired with the very, very, very tough start to the season, you do start to point fingers, and the national media is starting to point them as well. Is it like, okay, you guys had your opportunities. I think, the one we agree on is Garrett Crochet, who actually kind of didn't have the greatest start today for the Red Sox. It's one of those things where I think he's the guy where you can look at and go, yeah, he should have been an Oriole. I know people are going to say Dylan Cease and them. Okay, you should have gotten them. Should have gotten someone from the Mariners. Not sure how much those two would have helped right now, especially if it's for a rental like Cease. But I understand the concerns. I think overall, I'm not going to say he's right, the window's closing. I think it is limited, the window, because of what he said, until you get maybe some extensions. If Gunnar, Adley, Jackson, and Westberg are on the team for the next 10 years, I would say that's your window because you can build around them. Now, if you don't get extensions and that goes to, the next 4 or 5, then yes, it closes, in quotes, the window sooner. But I think as long as they have the core, that window's going to be there. But yes, I think they did have a better opportunity where maybe if you get, a bigger name instead of Trevor Rogers for Norby and Stowers, things like that, where in hindsight it didn't work out. It's easy to look back now and be like, yeah, they missed out on the opportunity to blow this thing open.
Well, I think the bigger part for me in general, it's still going to go back to how the last 2 years have finished, right, Zach? Mm-hmm. If the Baltimore Orioles had advanced to the ALCS in 2023 or advanced to the DS last year, or you saw some playoff success, then the frustration would be here right now. But you would still want, okay, they just get healthy, get right, and this team proves that they can get in, they can make some noise. I think the part that's starting to come to fruition here, Zach, is the worry of, are the O's going to get to that point?
Mm-hmm.
And look, it's documented. They haven't been going deep in games as a starting rotation. One of the starting rotation ERA, one of the worst in baseball, if not the worst, right? They are constantly behind the 8 ball. The team has not swung the bats well over the last couple of weeks, they don't swing the bats well against lefties right now. Swinging it pretty well against righties. For the most part, they've been swinging it well versus righties. But you can feel there's a little bit of pressing. The offense seems tense.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're looking at the numbers here. Cedric Mullins, at this current moment, is leading in every single category. That's not an exaggeration. Cedric Mullins is leading in every statistical category for the Baltimore Orioles. Average 297, home runs 6, 19 RBIs, OBP 441, and 22 hits. He's a veteran. He's been through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the key. What did Brian Roberts just talk about, Zach, of these young guys, and they're trying to figure it out. All eyes are on them. The Orioles' young nucleus arguably has the most pressure on them in Major League Baseball. And the reality is the majority of them have not proven it enough yet at the big league level. And so the team's struggling, and they're supposed to be these heroes. And that's not a fair thing, but that is the reality. It is a magnifying glass. This is supposed to be the core of the team. This is supposed to be the strength.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, Colton Cowser's missing. That's a big loss.
Yeah.
But Adley Rutschman's still there. Jordan Westberg's there. They're frustrated. I mean, let's go through this list. Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westberg, Cedric Mullins. Those are all former All-Stars, right? It's 5 players. Cedric Mullins is the only one that's actually having a consistent average. No one else is hitting above 239 at this moment. Adley Rutschman's hitting 214. Jordan Westberg's hitting 190. All right, what about your top prospect that's trying to figure it out in Jackson Holiday? He's hitting 234 on the season, had some great at-bats the other day. Still trying to learn to be a big league player. Heston Kjerstad starting to pick it up at 245. I mean, the actually only other guy that's hitting higher than 245 in this lineup, you want to take a guess who that is?
Batting higher than 245, O'Hearn?
Brian O'Hearn. Cedric Mullins and Ryan O'Hearn, the two most veteran presence of bats on the team that are almost everyday starters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's context here. It's context of how it all goes. And maybe then with adversity, who knows more than with Brian Roberts or former players? You know who does is Trey Mancini. Yeah. So, Zach, let's play that clip of Trey Mancini on trying to break through when you're struggling early in a season.
I mean, so 9-13. So there's been 22 games. So there's still 140 left. So yeah, in context, that's not many games. Obviously, you want to get out to a better start than that. But with that being said, there's always time to turn it around. Like, from personal experience, like I've been on some teams that have started well and not started well. And, it's a long season, but sometimes you just like something happens. There's like a certain game or certain event that happens that can just change the whole vibe of the team. And then you start rolling. So I've been on a lot of teams where that's happened before, both in the minors and majors. So it's important to stay the course and kind of give yourself that little kick in the ass, I guess, that I would say to kind of spring you forward and change your mindset. Because it is hard to break out of ruts in this game. But if you take a step back, look at the big picture and just try to win that day and not look too far into the future of where you want to be, that's how you started it. It doesn't happen, by looking like, oh, in a month from now, this is where we want to be. You got to do it every day and do little things.
You got to do little things. You got to do it every day. And you got to focus on big picture, just trying to take it one day at a time.
Yeah. I will say the one thing that, he talks about how hard it is to get out of a rut. And he says, sometimes all it takes is one thing. My concern with the Orioles is I felt like 24-2. If that wasn't the one thing, I felt like getting one hit the next day probably should have been that one thing. Showed a little fight last night, so maybe it's this all collectively will be this one thing. But it feels like, he talked about getting, punch in the mouth, stuff like that. Like, there's something that happens that you're kind of like, whoa, okay, we got to turn this around. That's what I'm looking for the Orioles now is we've seen the adversity and, we've talked about before, 2023 was all sunshine and rainbows. it was all sunshine and rainbows, and it was just everything went well, everything went right until Felix honestly went down. This team has been punched in the mouth to start this season. I think it's time to, you hope that this is a moment where they can take this and be like, okay, this is the start of it. Something happens. I was honestly really hoping a comeback win last night would kind of be the start of it. But, that's what sticks out to me is when Trey talks about it's hard to get out of a rut mentally, and start, especially when you start slow in Major League Baseball. But, him talking about that one thing that can happen, I think that's where I'm looking for the Orioles to be like, okay, you're going to get punched. Things are going to happen through 162 games. Maybe not always a 24-2, but we see every year, usually at least one game, you're going to give up like 15. That just happens. It's how do you respond? So that's what we're looking for now. We didn't see it the past 2 games. We saw a little bit more last night, but you need to get, I would love for them to put up a big game against Mackenzie Gore tonight and kind of be like, okay, we can't hit the good lefties. Go out there. Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is, like we said, get to mid-May and you really can say, all right, this team is in trouble. This team is whatever you want to say. And people could say right now, well, Ryan, this team's in trouble right now. Well, yeah, they're not playing well. And I said this before. I don't think this is a bad team. I think it's a bad brand of baseball.